welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really interesting material that you sent over, tackling those huge questions about life's purpose and, well, the fear of death.
Yeah, absolutely.
And specifically, we're diving into a YouTube discussion featuring Radhika Kripa Devi talking about the Bhagavad Gita.
Exactly. And our goal here, our sort of mission, is to really pull out the key insights from the Gita's perspective, like Radhika Kripa Devi lays it out. We're looking at the soul's journey, this fear of death that everyone feels, and what the Gita actually says is the point of being human.
It's pretty amazing how this ancient text, especially through these insights, still speaks so directly to things we worry about today. And the main thread, it seems, running through the transcript is this idea that if you understand who you really are and why you're here, that actually helps dissolve the fear of death.
That's the core connection, yeah.
Okay, so let's jump right into that big one then, the fear of death. It's universal, isn't it? That feeling about the unknown.
It really is. And the Bhagavad Gita, at least as it's explained here, gives a specific reason for it. Radhika Kripa Devi suggests it's basically a lack of knowledge.
A lack of knowledge.
About what?
About the soul. About our true self, the eternal part of us, and how it's connected to the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna. So the idea is this fear isn't like fundamental. It's a symptom of not knowing our real nature.
Ignorance, essentially. She uses that analogy, right? Lighting a match in a dark room.
Exactly. That one spark of knowledge, that understanding just pushes back the darkness, the fear.
Right. And this brings up those terms from the transcript. The Jivatma, that's the individual soul, like us, and the Paramatma, the supreme soul. And here's where it got really interesting for me. The transcript talks about how the Jivatma is an ansh, a part of the Paramatma.
Yes, a part of the whole.
But then it asks, okay, if we're part of God, essentially, why is it such a struggle to get back? Why all the difficulty down here? Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the transcript touches on this idea that the material world, with all its ups and downs, is maybe like a game or Maya.
An illusion.
Sort of, an illusion that makes us feel separate, disconnected from where we came from. And this leads right into the next big piece. Understanding the purpose of human life. If we know why we're in this game, maybe the fear of leaving it lessens.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. The transcript really hammers this point home. Understanding why we're here is step one to tackling the fear of death. It uses that stark example, too, about what happens right when someone dies. Your name, your job title, all that stuff.
It just vanishes instantly.
Yeah, the example of people just calling the person the body. It's quite blunt, but it really shows how temporary those labels are.
It does. And the Gita's teaching here, through Radhika Kripa Devi, is that we're not just here to suffer pointlessly. There's a deeper reason for our being here. The transcript mentions the subtle body briefly, the Sukshma Sharira.
Okay, what's that exactly?
Think of it as like the blueprint carrying our mind, our intelligence, our ego, the stuff that travels with the soul between lives.
Okay, so it's not the physical body, but it's not the pure soul either.
Right, and getting liberation, moksha, means going beyond even that subtle layer back to our pure spiritual self. This subtle body, holding our consciousness, is really key for understanding what happens next, which is reincarnation.
Reincarnation, right. So if the physical body and its identity drop away, something must continue. The Gita says it's the soul traveling in this subtle body.
Correct. And the transcript explains that your state of mind, your consciousness, right at the moment of death, that's what determines your next life.
Wow. That's a heavy thought. Your very last thought dictates your next existence.
It's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
And they use that example from the Srimad Bhagavatam about Bharata Maharaja.
The king who became attached to a deer.
That's the one. He gave up his kingdom for spiritual life, but then got fixated on this deer. And because that was his dominant thought when he died.
He became a deer in his next life.
Exactly. The point being, our attachments right now are literally shaping our future reality. It's presented not just as a myth, but as a fundamental principle.
And they connect that to modern life, don't they? Like being too attached to money, to Lakshmi.
Yes, citing the Guru Vani, suggesting you might come back as a serpent guarding treasure if wealth is your main focus at the end. It really makes you pause and think about where your energy is going.
Definitely. And it wasn't just wealth, it mentioned attachment to children too, right? Santana.
The transcript mentions the possibility, maybe a bit shocking, of rebirth as a pig with a large litter if parental attachment is the overwhelming consciousness at death. These aren't meant to be literal predictions for everyone, but strong illustrations of the principle.
Okay, but this brings up a very practical worry. I mean, how can anyone guarantee what they'll be thinking at the exact moment of death? Life is unpredictable, moods change.
That's a totally fair question, and the transcript does address it. It talks about how our subconscious impressions, the things we focus on consistently throughout life, tend to surface.
Like in dreams.
Yeah, sort of like dreams during sleep. Death is compared to a kind of long sleep in that sense. The dominant patterns of your consciousness are likely what come forward.
So it's less about controlling that one single moment and more about the overall trend of your life's focus.
Precisely. Which connects to what Krishna says in the Gita. Yatamam prapatyante tam stataiva pachamyaham. Basically, how you approach God, how you surrender throughout life, is how God reciprocates.
So consistent effort, consistent devotion, not just a last-minute hope.
Exactly. It's about building that consciousness over time. The transcript also brings in that verse from Guru Nanak about how precious this human life is.
Right. Don't waste it just chasing material things.
Because what you focus on now is creating that future state.
Okay, so if consciousness at death is the hinge, how do you actually break the cycle? How do you avoid the Punarapi Maramam's birth and death again and again?
The answer given is clear. Remembering Narayana, remembering Krishna at the time of death. That is what leads to liberation, escaping the cycle.
But how do you ensure you remember, given what we just said about unpredictability?
It comes back to that consistent practice. The transcript emphasizes surrendering completely with your mind, your speech, your actions. Manasa vacha kamana. And then it brings in that interesting idea, Jaisa Anvaisaman.
As the food, so the mind.
Yeah, from the Chandogya Upanishad. It links our physical intake to our mental state, highlighting the practice of offering food, prasada, to the Lord first. The idea is that eating sanctified food helps purify consciousness.
That's fascinating, connecting diet directly to spiritual state. And there was that reference to the Guvavani, too.
Yes, saying that if you eat without remembering or offering to the Lord, you're basically just consuming sin. It all feeds into this idea that purification is needed.
Purification seems key, which ties into Krishna's promise, right? Sarvapapevyo mokshayishami mashucha.
I will deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. It underlines that surrender and devotion lead to purification, which is necessary to enter the spiritual realm. It's not automatic. It requires that transformation through devotion.
Got it. Now, there was also a point in the transcript about a potential contradiction. If God is the ultimate cause of everything.
Does that mean God causes bad things too? Yeah, that's a classic theological question.
How does the transcript address that?
Well, it explains that God, as Paramatma, is in everyone's heart, but more like a witness. He permits things, he allows us to remember him, and he also allows us to forget him.
So he doesn't interfere with our choices for free will.
Exactly. He respects our minor freedom, as it's sometimes called. He observes, he permits, but he doesn't force our hand. Think about Krishna telling Arjuna to do his duty, but without being attached to the results.
Right, act selflessly. So there's a divine presence, but our actions and choices within that framework are still ours.
That seems to be the understanding presented, which brings us back to Krishna's core instruction.
Fix your mind on me, be my devotee, worship me, offer obeisance to me.
The transcript points out that while God can say me, our job is to focus on the devotee part, on cultivating that relationship.
And it even touched on practical things, like chanting japa while driving.
Yeah, acknowledging that, okay, maybe your focus isn't 100% perfect then, but it's still far better than not chanting at all, engaging with the holy name in whatever way you can.
But the ideal is attentive listening.
Yes, really listening to the mantra, like the Hare Krishna mantra, letting it be food for the soul, engaging the ears, engaging the heart. And there's this emphasis on the special mercy of this current age, Kali Yuga, that the Lord has put all his power into his holy names.
Making it more accessible.
That's the idea. And it shared that lovely story from the Guruvani about Sainai, the barber.
Oh, right, where he prioritized serving devotees, and the Lord himself showed up to do his barber duties for the king.
Exactly. It's an illustration that if you dedicate yourself to God and his devotees, God takes care of your other responsibilities. Devotion is reciprocated.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up, this dive into the Gita's perspective via the transcript, it offers a really a deep way of looking at life, death, our whole journey.
It really does. For me, the big takeaways are understanding we're spiritual beings, not just bodies, seeing a real purpose in being human, grasping how our consciousness, especially at death, matters hugely, and seeing devotion as the way through it all.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to process, doesn't it? thinking about how these ancient ideas sit with your own feelings about life and mortality.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought for everyone listening to ponder. Given how much weight is put on our state of mind when we leave this life, what practical things, even small things, can you start doing today in daily life to gently steer your consciousness towards your real purpose, towards that connection with the divine?
That's a great question to reflect on, something to definitely explore further.